3 security guards escorted me out of my own restaurant because I looked suspicious in my gardening clothes. "People like you shouldn't be bothering our real customers," the general manager said, as security pushed me toward the door. I could have pulled out my ID, shown them my business cards, or made a scene. Instead, I quietly walked to my car, pulled out my phone, and made one call to my assistant. By closing time that night, that manager's entire world was about to change. Sometimes the best revenge is simply letting people discover exactly who they've been disrespecting. Before I continue with this absolutely insane workplace revenge story, I need to ask you something. Have you ever been judged by your appearance? Have you ever been treated like you don't belong somewhere because of how you looked? Drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from, because this story is going to show you exactly why you should never judge a book by its cover. This is a true story about karma, justice, and the power of treating people with dignity. By the end of this video, you'll understand why the smallest acts of kindness matter more than any designer outfit ever could. My name is Robert Harrison, and I'm 67 years old. 45 years ago, I started with a single food truck and built Harrison's Fine Dining, one of America's largest restaurant chains with 847 locations and $2.8 billion in annual revenue. But let me take you back to where it all began, because understanding my journey is crucial to understanding why what happened that night cut so deep. In 1978, I was 22 years old, fresh out of college with a business degree and nothing but dreams. My father was a factory worker. My mother cleaned houses. We never had money for fancy restaurants. Special occasions meant Denny's if we were lucky. I bought that old food truck with my last $3,000, money I'd saved working 3 jobs through college, dishwasher at a diner, weekend janitor at an office building, and tutoring other students. I knew what it felt like to count every dollar. My vision wasn't about getting rich. It was about creating the kind of place my family could afford to go, where they'd be treated with respect, regardless of their worn clothes or modest budget. The first restaurant opened in 1983 in a rundown building I renovated myself. 28 seats, and I designed every detail with one principle in mind: make everyone feel welcome. I developed every recipe, waited tables for the first 3 years, washed dishes when needed, and knew every customer by name. My core philosophy was written in our first employee handbook, and I made every new hire memorize it. Never judge a customer by their clothes, their car, or their appearance. Everyone who walks through our door is someone's mother, father, child, or friend. Everyone should feel at home in our restaurant. But success has a way of changing things. As we grew from 1 location to 10, then 50, then hundreds, I gradually stepped back from daily operations. We went public in 1995, and I became more of a businessman than a restaurateur. When my wife Margaret was diagnosed with cancer in 2019, I stepped back even further. For 2 years, I barely thought about the business. I was focused on doctor appointments, treatments, hope, and ultimately, heartbreak. Margaret passed away in 2021, and our restaurant chain lost its heart, me. For the past 3 years since her death, I've been a ghost in my own company. Board meetings felt meaningless. The restaurants felt like someone else's business. I focused on my garden, my grief, and my memories. That was my biggest mistake. Last Wednesday started like most days since retirement. I woke up at sunrise. Sleeping past 6 felt like a waste of Margaret's memory. She always said mornings were God's way of giving us a fresh start. I spent the entire day working on our garden. Margaret had designed it herself. Roses, lavender, a small vegetable patch where we grew tomatoes and herbs. Maintaining it was my way of staying connected to her. By evening, I was a mess. I'd been painting the garden shed, touching up the porch railings, and replanting the rose bed. My clothes told the story. Faded jeans with holes in both knees, a white t-shirt that was now more green than white from paint splatters, work boots caked with dried mud. My hair was disheveled, paint streaks on my face and hands, dirt under my fingernails. I looked exactly like what I was, a 67-year-old man who'd spent 10 hours doing manual labor. When dinner time came, I stood in my kitchen looking at the empty refrigerator. Cooking for one never felt worth the effort. That's when I decided to visit my original restaurant downtown, the flagship location where it all began. This wasn't just any restaurant to me. This was the building where Margaret and I had our first date. Actually, before it was even a restaurant. I'd taken her to see the empty, run-down space in 1982 and told her my dreams. She'd looked at the peeling paint, broken windows, and said, "I can see it, Robert. I can see families laughing here." We held our wedding reception there in 1984, every anniversary dinner, every milestone celebration. When Margaret's cancer went into remission briefly in 2020, our first meal out was at that location. Her funeral reception was held there too. I'd closed the restaurant to the public for the day, and 200 people came to remember her. It was the last time I'd been there. Driving downtown in my modest 2015 Honda Civic, I felt nervous. The car had 180,000 miles on it now. Margaret used to tease me about buying expensive cars when this one ran perfectly fine. "Robert," she'd say, "money doesn't make the man. Character does." As I pulled up to Harrison's Fine Dining, I barely recognized the building I'd lovingly restored 40 years earlier. The modest storefront had been replaced with floor-to-ceiling windows. The warm, welcoming entrance was now intimidating marble and brass. Valet service had replaced the simple parking spaces where regular families used to park their modest cars. The transformation was stunning, but it felt cold. This looked like the kind of place that would intimidate the young couple I used to be. The valet was a young man, maybe 20 years old, wearing a crisp uniform that probably cost more than I used to make in a week at my first job. He was organizing a collection of luxury vehicles, BMWs, Mercedes, a Porsche, even a Tesla. When he saw my Honda Civic approaching, his professional smile faltered slightly. As I pulled up, he hesitated before approaching the driver's side. "Good evening, sir," he said, but his tone suggested he was hoping I'd realize I was in the wrong place. "This is Harrison's Fine Dining." "Yes, I know," I replied with a smile. "I've been looking forward to eating here for a long time." His eyes scanned my paint-splattered appearance through the window. Did you make a reservation, sir?" "No, but I was hoping to sit at the bar. I don't need anything fancy." The young man, his name tag read Tyler, looked genuinely uncomfortable. "Sir, this is a pretty upscale place. The dress code is, well, it's pretty strict." I could see he was trying to be kind, trying to save me from embarrassment. In that moment, I realized this kid was probably a good person who'd been trained to protect customers from awkward situations. "I appreciate the heads up," I said, "but I'd still like to try." Tyler reluctantly handed me a valet ticket. "Just, be prepared." The hostesses are pretty particular about the dress code. As I walked toward the entrance, I watched Tyler shake his head sympathetically. He probably thought he was about to witness a middle-aged man get humiliated. He had no idea how right he was. Walking through the front door was like entering a different universe. The restaurant I'd built to welcome families like mine had been transformed into something that would have intimidated my parents into leaving immediately. Gone were the warm wood tones and comfortable booths. Instead, I found myself in a space that screamed exclusive. Marble floors so polished they reflected the crystal chandeliers, gold-trimmed walls, and furniture that looked more suited for a museum than a family dinner. The hostess station looked like a fortress, a massive podium behind which two impeccably dressed young women stood like sentries. Both were wearing outfits that probably cost more than many families spend on groceries in a month. The woman on the left, her name tag read Ashley, noticed me first. Her initial professional smile froze as she took in my appearance from head to toe. I watched her eyes register every detail: the paint-stained shirt, the holes in my jeans, the mud on my boots. She nudged her colleague, Stephanie, according to her name tag, who looked up from her computer screen. Stephanie's reaction was even more pronounced. Her eyebrows raised slightly, and she exchanged a meaningful look with Ashley. I could read their silent conversation as clearly as if they'd spoken aloud. How did security let this guy get past the door? Ashley approached me with a smile that would have fooled no one. "Good evening, sir," she said, in a tone reserved for unwelcome visitors. "How may I help you?" The pause before "help you" spoke volumes. "Good evening," I replied warmly. "I'd like a table for dinner, please." Ashley's professional mask slipped for just a moment. She glanced back at Stephanie, who had moved closer to observe this interaction. "Do you have a reservation, sir?" Ashley asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer and was hoping I'd realize my mistake. "No, I don't, but I was hoping you might have something available at the bar." "I'm afraid," Ashley said, her voice becoming more formal, "that we have a strict dress code at Harrison's Fine Dining." She gestured subtly toward a small sign near the entrance that I hadn't noticed. In elegant script, it read, "Gentlemen, collared shirts and dress pants required. Athletic wear, casual attire, and work clothes are not permitted." Work clothes. The clothes I'd worn to build this empire were now banned from entering it. "I understand you have standards," I said, keeping my voice calm and pleasant. "But I'm just looking for a quiet dinner. Nothing fancy." Stephanie had now joined the conversation, positioning herself slightly behind Ashley, like backup. "Sir," she said, her voice carrying more authority, "Harrison's Fine Dining is a very upscale establishment. Our clientele expects a certain atmosphere." The way she emphasized clientele made it clear I wasn't considered part of that group. "I appreciate that," I said, "but surely you can make an exception for someone who just wants a simple meal." Ashley and Stephanie exchanged another look, this one saying, "This guy isn't getting the hint." "Sir," Ashley said, her voice taking on the tone you'd use with a confused child, "perhaps you're not familiar with our restaurant. Our entrees start at $45. This might not be the right fit for your budget." The assumption stung. They were looking at my clothes and assuming I couldn't afford to eat there, in the restaurant I'd built specifically so people wouldn't have to worry about being judged for their financial situation. "I think I can manage the prices," I said quietly. Stephanie stepped forward, clearly deciding to be more direct. "Sir, I think what my colleague is trying to explain is that you might be more comfortable at, well, perhaps McDonald's would be more suitable for your style." McDonald's. The words hit me like a physical blow. I stood there, in the restaurant I'd built from nothing, being told by my own employees that I belonged at McDonald's. Around us, other customers were beginning to notice the commotion. Well-dressed couples were glancing over, whispering among themselves. I could see phones being subtly pointed in my direction, people recording what they probably thought was an entertaining encounter with someone who clearly didn't belong. "Look," I said, trying one last time to maintain my composure, "I just want to sit somewhere quiet and have dinner. I'm not asking for special treatment." "Sir," Ashley's voice was becoming sharper, "we've explained our policy. This restaurant maintains certain standards, and you're simply not in compliance." "What if I promise to sit quietly and not bother anyone?" I asked. Stephanie let out a small, incredulous laugh. Sir, it's not about bothering people. It's about maintaining the atmosphere our customers expect when they pay premium prices. By now, a small crowd of customers had gathered to watch the spectacle. I heard fragments of their conversations. Can you believe someone would try to come here looking like that? Thank goodness they have standards. Some people have no self-awareness. Probably doesn't even realize this is a nice place. Each comment felt like another nail in the coffin of everything I'd tried to build. That's when Ashley made the decision that changed everything. She reached for the small radio attached to her dress and pressed a button. Security to hostess station. Security to hostess station immediately. You're calling security? I asked, genuinely shocked. Sir, Stephanie said loudly, clearly intending for nearby customers to hear. You've been asked politely multiple times to leave. We have other customers waiting and you're becoming disruptive. I'm not being disruptive, I protested. I'm just asking for dinner. Sir, Ashley added, when someone doesn't understand social cues, we have protocols in place. Within 3 minutes, 3 security guards arrived. The team was led by a man whose name tag read Marcus Chen, a large, intimidating figure who looked like he took his job very seriously. What's the situation here? Marcus asked, his eyes immediately focusing on me as the obvious problem. This gentleman, Stephanie explained, has been asked to leave due to dress code violations. He's refusing to comply and is disrupting our other guests. Marcus studied me from head to toe, taking in every detail of my appearance. His expression made it clear that he saw exactly what the hostesses had seen, someone who didn't belong in their establishment. Sir, Marcus said, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to being obeyed. This is a private establishment with specific dress requirements. I'm going to have to ask you to leave voluntarily. I'm not causing any trouble, I said. I just want to have dinner. Marcus stepped closer. Sir, you need to understand something. People like you make our legitimate customers uncomfortable. This isn't the kind of place where you can just walk in wearing whatever you want. People like you. The phrase echoed in my mind. In my own restaurant, I had become people like you. What happens if I refuse to leave? I asked, though I was curious rather than defiant. Marcus's expression hardened. Then you'll be escorted out. We don't tolerate people who can't respect our establishment's standards. The crowd of onlookers had grown. I counted at least 25 well-dressed customers, all watching the drama unfold. Some were openly recording with their phones. Others were whispering and pointing. Their comments reached my ears. Finally, a restaurant that doesn't let just anyone in. Good for them for maintaining standards. Can you imagine trying to eat dinner next to that? Thank God they have proper security. I'll leave, I said quietly, hoping to end this with some dignity intact. But Marcus shook his head. Too late for that, sir. Security protocol requires that we escort you out to ensure you don't attempt to return. Is that really necessary? I asked. It's policy, Marcus said firmly. We've had problems with people like you coming back and causing more trouble. And so, for the first and last time in my life, I was physically escorted from my own establishment. Marcus took my arm, not roughly, but firmly enough to make it clear this wasn't optional. His 2 colleagues flanked me as we began the long walk toward the exit. The walk felt like it lasted forever. Every step was accompanied by the stares and comments of my own customers. Good riddance. About time. This is exactly what this place needs, keeping the riffraff out. Probably homeless. Thank God they have security. Can you imagine the smell? As we approached the door, a well-dressed woman actually started applauding. Bravo! She called out. Finally, a restaurant that maintains its standards. Others joined in. I was being applauded out of my own restaurant. Marcus opened the door and gestured for me to exit. "Sir," he said, loud enough for nearby customers to hear, "don't come back. We don't tolerate this kind of behavior, and your photo will be shared with security at all our locations." All our locations? I was being banned from every restaurant in my own chain. Outside, Tyler the valet looked embarrassed as he brought my Honda Civic. "I'm sorry, sir," he whispered. "I tried to warn you." I could see he felt bad about what had happened. Of everyone I'd encountered, Tyler was the only one who'd shown any human decency. I sat in my car for 15 minutes, watching through the restaurant's windows as normal service resumed. Ashley and Stephanie were laughing with each other, probably sharing jokes about the crazy homeless guy they'd just dealt with. Marcus was high-fiving his colleagues, proud of a job well done. The customers had returned to their expensive meals and exclusive atmosphere, probably feeling even better about their choice of restaurant now that they'd seen how well it was protected. Through the window, I could see the elegant interior I'd created, filled with the kind of customers I'd once dreamed of serving. But somewhere along the way, serving customers had become serving the right kind of customers. I thought about Margaret and what she would have said. She'd always been our moral compass, the one who reminded me why we'd started this business. "Robert," she'd said when we opened our first location, "promise me you'll never forget that everyone deserves to feel special when they go out to eat." Everyone. I'd forgotten that promise. Worse, I'd allowed my company to forget it completely. Driving home, I realized that what I'd experienced wasn't an aberration. It was the culture I'd allowed to develop through my neglect. For 3 years, I'd been absent while my company transformed into everything I'd never wanted it to become. My employees weren't evil people. They were good people who'd been trained in a system that valued appearance over character, exclusion over inclusion, profit over principles. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. Of course. What should I tell them the meeting is about? At home, I called my assistant Linda. She'd been with me for 15 years, starting as a receptionist and working her way up to become one of my most trusted advisors. If anyone could help me understand how we'd gotten to this point, it was Linda. "Mr. Harrison, it's unusual for you to call this late. Is everything all right?" "Linda, I need you to schedule an emergency meeting for 9 a.m. tomorrow. I want everyone there. CEO, COO, HR Director, Operations Director. And specifically, I want Brian Thompson, the General Manager of our downtown flagship location." Of course, what should I tell them the meeting is about? I took a deep breath. Customer service policies, dress code enforcement, and Linda, I need you to do something else. Pull all customer service complaints from the last 6 months, every single one. I want to see anything related to dress codes, staff attitude, customers feeling unwelcome, discrimination, everything. There was a pause on the line. "Mr. Harrison, that's going to be quite a lot of material. Are you sure you want all of it?" "Every complaint, Linda, and I want detailed summaries, names, dates, specific incidents." "Can I ask what prompted this?" I closed my eyes, still feeling the humiliation of being escorted out like a criminal. I was just escorted out of my own restaurant by security. The silence that followed lasted nearly 30 seconds. "I'm sorry, what? Did you just say?" "You heard correctly. 3 security guards physically removed me from the downtown location because I was wearing work clothes." "But didn't you tell them who you were?" "No, Linda. I wanted to see how my employees treat regular customers, and what I saw was appalling." "Oh my God, Mr. Harrison, I had no idea." "Neither did I, and that's the problem. For 3 years I've been so disconnected from the business that I didn't realize we'd become everything I swore we'd never be." Linda's voice was shaky. "What do you want me to do?" "Set up that meeting." "And Linda, This is going to be a very difficult day for some people. Make sure HR has termination paperwork ready." That night, I didn't sleep. I spent hours reading through financial reports, customer surveys, and employee feedback that I'd been ignoring for years. The picture that emerged was devastating. Our customer satisfaction scores had been declining steadily. Employee turnover was at an all-time high. Most damning of all, we'd received hundreds of complaints about staff treating customers poorly based on their appearance or perceived economic status. I'd built a company that had become everything I'd tried to escape from as a young man. By morning, I had a plan. At 9 a.m. sharp, I walked into our corporate headquarters wearing my best Italian suit, $30,000 watch, and handmade shoes. The contrast with the previous night couldn't have been more dramatic. Yesterday I was people like you. Today I was the billionaire founder of a restaurant empire. In the conference room, my entire leadership team was assembled, looking nervous and confused. David Martinez, our CEO for the past 5 years, was shuffling through papers anxiously. Sarah Chen, our COO, looked like she was preparing for bad news. Michael Roberts from HR was checking his phone constantly. Jennifer Walsh, our operations director, was clearly wondering what crisis had prompted this emergency meeting. And then there was Brian Thompson, the downtown general manager. He sat confidently at the far end of the table, probably assuming this was about quarterly numbers or expansion plans. He had no idea his world was about to end. "Good morning, everyone," I began, taking my seat at the head of the table. "Thank you all for being here on such short notice." "Of course, Mr. Harrison," David said. "What can we do for you?" Yesterday evening, I had what I would call an educational experience at our flagship downtown location. Brian straightened up in his chair, suddenly alert. "I decided to visit the restaurant around 7 p.m. It had been a long day working in my garden, so I was wearing what you might call work clothes, paint-stained shirt, old jeans, boots with some mud on them." I paused, watching their faces carefully. I walked into my restaurant, the first restaurant I ever opened, the place where my wife and I celebrated our anniversary every year for 39 years, and I was told that the restaurant wasn't suitable for people like me. The room was completely silent. I was informed that McDonald's would be more appropriate for my style. When I persisted in asking for just a seat at the bar, security was called. 3 guards escorted me out while customers watched, applauded, and recorded the incident on their phones. You could have heard a pin drop. "Brian," I said, turning to face him directly, "would you like to explain your establishment's dress code policy?" Brian's face had gone completely pale. His hands were visibly shaking. "Mr. Harrison, we have industry-standard dress requirements. Collared shirts and dress pants for men. It's to maintain our upscale atmosphere and meet customer expectations." "I see. And customers who don't meet these requirements?" We politely explain the policy and suggest alternative dining options that might be more suitable." "Such as McDonald's?" Brian swallowed hard. If a customer specifically asked for alternatives, our staff might mention more casual dining options. "Brian, let me read you something." I opened the thick folder Linda had prepared. "This is from our customer complaint database, Mrs. Eleanor Patterson, age 73. I came to your restaurant directly from my daughter's funeral. My black dress had gotten soiled during the burial service. Your hostesses treated me like I had a contagious disease. They suggested I go home and change before returning. I will never set foot in your establishment again." Brian looked like he was going to be sick. "Here's another one. Staff Sergeant Michael Rodriguez recently returned from deployment in Afghanistan. Due to my prosthetic leg, I wear special orthopedic shoes for comfort. Your security guard removed me from the restaurant for dress code violations. Despite my explanation of my military service and medical needs, I felt humiliated and ashamed. I flipped to another page. Maria Santos, single mother, working 2 jobs. I came to your restaurant between shifts, still wearing my hospital scrubs after a 12-hour shift as a nurse. Your staff told me that this type of establishment wasn't for people like me. I was trying to celebrate getting a promotion that would let me afford to take my children somewhere nice. The room was in stunned silence. Brian, these are not isolated incidents. In the last 6 months alone, we've received 47 complaints specifically about dress code discrimination, 73 complaints about staff in treating customers condescendingly based on their appearance, 31 complaints about customers being made to feel unwelcome because staff assumed they couldn't afford to eat there. That's 151 formal complaints in 6 months, Brian, from one location, and I was never informed about any of them. David Martinez leaned forward. Mr. Harrison, I can assure you that we take customer complaints seriously. Do you, David? Because I've reviewed the responses to these complaints. Most received form letters, some received no response at all. None resulted in any policy changes or staff retraining. I stood up and began pacing around the room. Brian, do you know why I started this company? To build a successful restaurant business? Wrong. I started this company because I grew up poor. My family couldn't afford to eat at nice restaurants. When we did go out, maybe twice a year, we were often made to feel like we didn't belong. Servers would ignore us. Hostesses would seat us by the kitchen. Other customers would stare at our discount store clothes. I promised myself that if I ever had my own restaurant, it would be different. Everyone would be welcome. Everyone would be treated with dignity. I turned to face Brian directly. You've turned my restaurant into exactly the kind of place I swore it would never become. Here's what's going to happen, I continued, my voice rising. Brian, you're fired, effective immediately. Marcus Chen, the security chief who escorted me out last night while calling me people like you, fired. Ashley Williams and Stephanie Martinez, the hostesses who suggested McDonald's, fired. Anyone on that staff who participated in making customers feel unwelcome based on their appearance, gone. We're implementing new hiring criteria. Empathy first, arrogance never. New dress code policy. Clean and respectful attire, welcome. We judge character, not clothing. Because true luxury isn't about keeping people out. It's about making everyone feel included, valued, and special. Today, Harrison's Fine Dining operates with a simple principle. Treat every customer like family, because that's what hospitality really means. The night I was escorted out of my own restaurant, I lost my pride, but found my purpose. Sometimes our worst moments become our most important. They force us to examine who we are and who we want to become. Remember, how you treat people when you don't have to reveal who you really are. Choose respect, choose dignity, choose to make others feel valued, because at the end of the day, the only thing that truly matters is how you made other people feel. If this story touched your heart, please like this video and subscribe for more stories about human dignity and treating people right. See you in the next video.